Welcome to Elegant Integrations, where we will be discussing how you can integrate Quickbase with other web services to extend your business processes. So my name is Tim Kutcher. I'm a software engineer at DyeCorp Inc. I graduated from Johns Hopkins with a degree in computer science in 2019, and DyeCorp adopted Quickbase around 2014. And back then I had originally worked as an intern building Quickbase apps. Then after getting my degree and getting some web development experience, now working full time, began extending our Quickbase systems to interface with our other systems in a few different scenarios, and have come across several useful approaches in doing so. So the use case that I'll be going through today highlights how we can use Quickbase as an interface for our peers when connecting our business systems and processes. So the solution is in this example, is a Quickbase app that lets our PR and marketing teams manage the news post content for our websites, dyecorp.com and zpdsolutions.com, where ZPD Solutions is just a child company of DyeCorp. So I help maintain the code for those websites, and our PR team, when they have a news post that they want to post, an article, would give me a Word document and just send that to me in an email with some specs for the author, when to date it, etc. And then I would take that, convert it to HTML, make sure to escape all the correct characters, clean it up, and drop it with the static assets for the website so that when a user visits zpdsolutions.com/news, they get the content for that news article. But then, of course, to get the final thing that everybody's happy with, it takes a couple iterations of this where we have to fix some things, change the dates, etc. And all in all, what we really want is to have some sort of automation for this with the code up in the cloud that kind of cuts out the developer as a middleman and automates away the part that I was doing of just cleaning it up and putting it up with the static assets. So to do this, we want to give our peers some sort of interface to this cloud, to the function. So we don't want to build an entire application from scratch and code it from the ground up, just to kind of meet this simple use case, because that's a lot to manage with security, databasing, all the text editors, etc. So what we really want to do is leverage Quickbase as an interface for our peers to interface with the function, and then also to get information back from the function. So to step through how we will do, or how it works, I'll flip over to this tab where we have right now we are just looking at a table of news posts. So these are things that we might want to post on our news website. So I'll add a new record to this table. And we are just going to post, ZPD attends Empower 2021, title, ZPD attends Empower 2021, subtitle, something like "It was fun." We will date it May 10th. We'll say Baltimore, Maryland. Contact name will be me, Tim Kutcher. There's my email. And we'll just make the content something simple like "It was fun" or "It works." And we will save and close that. So all we did was, database something to post on the website. We don't actually post it yet, but we're just creating a new, like a Word document. We're creating a new document. And then, so you see we have that record here, ZPD attends Empower 2021. When we actually want to publish that to the news site, our team would go and click the publish button here. They have the news post that we're publishing, so the ZPD attends Empower 2021. The publish to, so they have an option to pick between dev and prod, where this is just distinguishing between whether we want to post to the real zpdsolutions.com site, or we want to post to the dev site, test it out, make sure it looks good in our little development version of the ZPD Solutions website before we put it on the production version. So we'll leave it on dev for now so that we can inspect it. And the notes, this is just publishing notes for them to say, first publish, in demo. So just for tracking what this publish was. So when we save and close this, and we go over to our news post publishings table, we'll see this is the record we just added. And if we keep refreshing, we'll see that the status is that it's running. So something's happening. If we refresh again, so we got a success. So that means that whatever was running up in the cloud worked. So if we jump over to our, our site, the dev site, and refresh, and then go to our news page. This is the article we just added. So the ZPD attends Empower 2021. We open it up, and this is all the data from what we had set about the publish. But the good thing is for this, now let's say they go in and they realize they want to change something. So they can edit the record for the news post that they're publishing. Maybe they want to backdate it to May 9th and change the content to it still works. So we'll save and close that. But again, all we did was edit this. We didn't actually change the article that's out here right now. It's still the same thing. So this gives them a way to kind of work on something and then go and publish it. So now we'll go ahead and republish it. Same thing, we're going to say, change date, fix wording, and save and close that. Oops. Once that saves, we go back to the news post publishing. So right now it's pending, refresh again, receive, so it hasn't started running yet, refresh again. All right, so success, so it completed. So if we refresh here, now we have the new article in here. So it still works, and it was dated to May 9th. So the last thing I wanted to show in the solution we have set up right here is an option when we are doing the publish. Let's say hypothetically we were working on some new feature or some enhancement to what that function does up in the cloud, and we want some sort of way for someone besides us to test that it works. So we have a development and production version of our function that actually publishes the documents with the same API, just in an isolated development environment. What we can do is go to the advanced tab and change our service to be the development service, which would just be the development version of the code that might have the new feature in it. This just gives us a nice way to test out enhancements and whatnot end to end before introducing them into our business processes. So that is kind of the bulk of the system. And in building this, there are a few key concepts that were considered. So the first obvious one is just deployment. So what are good resources for deploying the solution? How do we get our code running up in the cloud in the first place? Next, security. So how do we make sure the right people can talk to our service? And then environment. So if we want to test out that system end to end and it's being used for real, we want a way to hook into our development service instead of our production one. And then status. So we want to get some idea if it worked. We want to know what's going on. And then, even more than that, transparency. So especially if it doesn't work, we want to get an idea why. We want to see, a little more about what happened. So the first note on deployment is I'm using Azure Functions for this. So serverless architectures like Azure Functions or AWS Lambdas are great for this because we don't have to write the actual server code. We can just focus on our functions and build out our API. We also don't need to worry about making sure it's up and running. Azure takes care of that for us. And we don't need it up all the time. We only need it when we want to, make those web calls. And then to start painting the picture of how the system actually works under the hood, we have a function here. So this is, the beginning of one of our Azure functions that takes in two parameters. So the news post ID of the news post we want to publish. This would be like the ZPD attends Empower, the ID to that record. And it also takes that publish to, which is whether we want to publish to the dev site or the realzpdsolutions.com site. If you notice what we did modeling this in Quickbase, all we did was create a table with fields for each of the parameters that we wanted to collect. So a news post publishing record just captures the parameters for this function. So the related news post, which is the news post ID, and the publish to, which is that realzpdsolutions.com or our zpdsolutions.com dev site. Once you have that, and a news post actually has many news post publishing. So that's how we could use republish the same news post multiple times by adding many news post publishing records. But once we have this set up, the Quickbase feature that we use to transfer these parameters from a Quickbase record into an actual web invocation are Quickbase webhooks. So to do this, you could use plain old Quickbase webhooks or the webhooks channel in Quickbase pipelines. But The initial webhook may have looked something like this, where for our record, we have the fields we want to capture. And then the webhook just makes a post request to the endpoint that our function is running. And we put in the payload the 2 parameters we need. So the news post ID, which is related news post, and the publish to field. And then the next consideration is security. So we need a way to authenticate with Quickbase to edit some records, grab some data, etc. And to do that, we need a user token. And of course, it's best for us to keep that user token in an environment variable rather than in our code base, because that user token is another form of authentication, just like a username and password. We want to kind of keep that more locked down, more secure. So we stick it in an environment variable and then read it from that. More importantly, to highlight an issue, let's say that instead of passing the news post ID, we provided all the data directly. So the title, the content, the author, etc. And this would have been a valid thing to do. I just happened to pass the ID and make the extra call to Quickbase to get the extra data that I needed, rather than stick it all in the first webhook, but both are valid. The problem with this is now anybody who can reach the function, if they're able to guess the endpoint of the function and the parameters, they essentially have full power to publish news posts for us, which obviously is something we want to prevent. We want a little more security, so we want to have the webhook provide some sort of basic verification. And the way I like to do that is actually by passing another Quickbase user token. So this user token isn't really used by the function to authenticate with Quickbase, but we can put it in the webhook, as well as store it on our server, and then look at the incoming request, the secret, and make sure it matches with what we have as the first thing we do before we process anything. So with this, we have some assurance that the client making the request is us. It's trusted, it's coming from us or Quickbase. And this relieves some of the pressure on our Azure/deployment to ensure that it's secure. Even though Azure specifically does have some security features available, this is a good general way to get some extra safety checks in there for some more checks for security. And then environment, how I showed how we could switch to our development service to test out some things end to end. The way we did that was by actually selecting a service record, where a service record has the fields needed for, or information needed for how to reach that service, mainly the domain. So then that service record, when we're linking to from a news post publishing, lets us specify dynamically in the webhook the endpoint URL that we want to call. So we dynamically build the endpoint URL from the link service record. Then another use or benefit of something like this is we can add something like webhook.site, which is a debugging tool that will log any of the webhooks that come into it, and it'll just log it so you can inspect the webhook. So when we're initially setting up our system or debugging the webhook, we could drop in the service for webhook.site, use that one, and then we can look at the actual payload getting sent. And this kind of helps with local development and making sure that the webhooks are adhering to our API, sending the right data. And this is just a good approach for helping us with good software development practices in multiple environments. And then status. So we wanted to give our users, some idea of what happened up in the cloud. And we saw those, pending, running, success, and luckily not error. So what we did, and that helps us in this record, or in the report, we got to see, some insight into what it was going on when we looked at this, the table report, the success of our latest one. So our system in the cloud now just needs to implement some sort of update status so that we can update the status of the news post publishing, which will just link to a different status. But to do this, we kind of need to know what the news post publishing is that we are updating. So a good idea in this type of webhook is to always include the record ID of the thing that triggered this. So that way, our system now knows which invocation, which news post publishing to update the status for. And then similar to status, now that we know the invoking record, we can take this a step further and dump some logs back to Quickbase. So we have this table where a news post publishing has many invocation logs. So if I jump back to the news post publishing table and we inspect one of these publishing records, we can view it here. And then we actually have this link to look at some of the logs that happened during this. And so this gives some more insight into what the actual server was doing, what it was logging. So we see some logs here, how it got the news post data from Quickbase, and then it took some JSON, some HTML, and pushed it out to our website. And this gives us some nice extra granular logging, especially useful if something went wrong. We want to figure out what went wrong, but we get our logs in Quickbase from the server, which is a nice benefit. So the way that we can build this is from a package that I recently put together called Quickbase Client. So the code we're looking at here kind of builds on that package to help send logs to Quickbase using the Python log handler base classes. So what we have here is we have an invocation log, which is a class of type Quickbase table. And that class essentially maps to our invocation log table in Quickbase. So a record in the invocation logs table maps to one Python object of type invocation log. So in this package, we can use this base Quickbase log handler that is provided in the library or the package. And we essentially just need to tell it how to map from a Python logging.log record object into an instance of our invocation log object. So we take the log level, we create the current time, we grab the message, and we use the related invocation that we know we want to link to for the news post publishing. And the library itself takes care of actually mapping this into the post requests needed to update the invocation logs table. So now in Python, if you're familiar with the Python logging, you can create a logger like normal, add the logger, this handler, the one we just wrote right here, and now your logging.info, logging.error, etc., those logging messages will wind up in Quickbase like we just saw. So if you're more curious on that Python package, there are some more, there's more documentation on my GitHub at github.com/tkutcher/Quickbase client if you are looking to integrate Quickbase with Python. Some extra features for querying utilities and object relational mapping, etc. But in general, this is a good solution for how we can connect Quickbase to these extra web services and leverage Quickbase as a front-end tool for our users when making those business process connections. And thank you very much.